In a world still grappling with the scars of racism, Daniel and Leah's story is a reminder that love transcends everything: skin color, societal judgments, and even the harshest of challenges. Their journey to parenthood was not just about the miracle of children, but about overcoming obstacles, fighting for dreams, and learning the true meaning of strength. With every tear, every heartache, and every triumph, they discovered that the greatest gift they could give their children was not just life, but the promise of a world where love is never limited by race. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the power of love, resilience, and unity. Join us in spreading a message of hope and understanding. Share this story with others, and let's inspire a world where kindness and compassion break down the barriers of prejudice. Subscribe, follow, and be part of a community that believes in love, equality, and creating change together. Daniel sat in his sleek, minimalist office, looking out over the city from the towering windows of his high-rise building. On the outside, everything seemed perfect. He was the CEO of a successful global tech company, respected by his peers, admired for his sharp mind, and recognized for his tireless work ethic. He had built his career from the ground up, a dream he had once thought impossible, and now, standing at the top, he had it all. Except one thing: a family. For years he had envisioned his life as a father, a role that seemed to complement the success he had achieved in his professional life. He imagined coming home after a long day at work, greeted by the laughter of children, the warmth of his wife's embrace, and the simple joy of shared moments. The thought of being a father filled him with hope and purpose, yet every attempt to make that dream a reality felt like it slipped further away. Leah, his beautiful wife, had always been his rock, a woman with a heart so kind, so full of love, that it seemed to shine through every interaction she had. Her humility, her grace, she was the perfect partner in every way. They had been married for several years, and during that time they had dreamed of building a family. But as the months passed and their efforts to conceive proved unsuccessful, their hope began to wane. They had been through it all: tests, treatments, and the endless stream of doctor's appointments. Every visit left them with little more than empty promises and broken expectations. Each month, Leah would hold her breath, waiting for the pregnancy test to show a positive result. And every month, the disappointment was the same: a negative result, followed by tears, silence, and the ache of a dream that felt so far out of reach. The emotional toll weighed heavily on them both. Daniel watched Leah, his strong and beautiful wife, battle her own pain. He could see the tears in her eyes, even when she tried to hide them. He could feel the sting of her disappointment as though it were his own. But there was nothing he could do to take away her hurt. He wanted to fix it, to give her the joy she so desperately longed for. But no matter how much he tried, he couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most to her: their inability to have children. It was a constant reminder that their dream of becoming parents seemed so far away. But Leah's resilience was something that amazed Daniel. Even in the darkest moments, she never gave up hope. She would smile through the tears, offering him words of encouragement when it was clear she was hurting. She would remind him that it wasn't the end, that they would find a way. And Daniel tried to believe her, though a part of him felt like they were fighting a battle they could never win. What hurt the most was seeing the world around them move forward. Friends would announce pregnancies, babies would be born, and yet their home remained empty. At family gatherings, well-meaning relatives would ask awkward questions, offering suggestions, or worse, sympathy that felt more like pity. Daniel could see Leah's discomfort in those moments, the way her smile would falter as she gracefully changed the subject, but deep down, he knew the pain was there. It was always there, hidden beneath the surface. Despite it all, Leah never allowed herself to become bitter. She would listen to others' stories of their children with genuine happiness for them, even though it only deepened her own longing. Daniel admired her more than she could ever know. But as much as he tried to support her, he felt the heaviness of the situation. Each time he saw the sadness in her eyes, it broke him a little more. She deserved to be a mother, just as he deserved to be a father. They both deserved the joy of a family. But it seemed as though the universe was pushing that dream farther and farther away. There were nights when Daniel would lie awake next to Leah, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing as she slept. He would wonder if this would ever change. He would wonder if they would ever get the family they so deeply desired. And when Leah would wake in the middle of the night, silently sobbing, Daniel would hold her, feeling powerless to make it stop. How could he fix this? How could he give her the one thing she longed for more than anything else? It wasn't just Leah who felt the weight of their infertility. Daniel, too, struggled. He wanted to be strong for her, but there were moments when the burden of the unspoken pain overwhelmed him. He could see how it was affecting their relationship, how the unfulfilled dream of becoming parents loomed over every conversation, every decision. There were moments when they would talk about other things, about work, about their friends. But the silence about their childlessness was deafening. But in those moments, Daniel would look at Leah and remind himself of the love that had brought them together. He knew that they had something extraordinary in each other, something worth fighting for. They had each other, and that had to be enough for now. It had to be enough because, deep down, Daniel knew that they would keep trying, no matter how long it took. They had been through so much already. They had conquered challenges in their careers, their personal lives, and yet this one felt different. It felt like the greatest challenge they would ever face. And so, they pressed on. Through the heartache, the disappointment, and the sleepless nights, Daniel and Leah clung to the hope that one day their dream would come true. They refused to give up, not because it was easy, but because they believed that their love was stronger than anything they faced. They believed that their family would come, even if they had to fight for it. Their journey had only just begun, but Daniel knew one thing with certainty. He would never stop fighting for Leah's dream of motherhood, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their road to parenthood would be long, but Daniel was determined to walk it by Leah's side, no matter how difficult or painful it might be. As time passed, Daniel's frustration grew in ways he couldn't fully articulate. In the world of business, he was accustomed to challenges. He had spent years building his company from the ground up, battling the obstacles that came with each new phase of growth. Problems in the boardroom, financial hurdles, and market competition were things Daniel knew how to handle. He met them head on, his determination unwavering, his will stronger than any setback. But infertility was different. There was no strategy for it, no plan he could follow, no way to overcome it with sheer determination and hard work. It was in the silence of the night that the weight of their struggles seemed unbearable. Daniel would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Leah's quiet sobs in the dark. She would press her face into the pillow, hoping he wouldn't hear the deep, shuddering breath that accompanied her tears. But Daniel always heard. How could he not? The ache in her heart was so palpable, so consuming, it reverberated through the room. He would reach for her in the dark, pulling her close to him, holding her tightly. But nothing could take away the pain. He wanted to fix it. He wanted to make it all better for her, to remove her heartbreak, to give her the one thing she longed for more than anything else. But there were no answers, no solutions. Only the quiet suffering that filled their home like a heavy fog. Leah would never speak about her pain unless it was absolutely necessary. She always hid it behind a smile, a soft laugh, or words of comfort. But Daniel could feel it, the sadness that weighed on her soul, the way her eyes dimmed with every pregnancy announcement they heard from friends, or the pain that flickered across her face when people innocently asked when they were going to start a family. Her resilience was incredible, but Daniel couldn't help but feel like he was losing her, bit by bit. And it wasn't just the sadness he could feel. There was also a quiet guilt that hovered over him. He was supposed to be the protector, the one who could fix things. But in this, he was powerless. And that realization gnawed at him every single day. The well-meaning words of others began to sting more than ever. "It'll happen when it's meant to," they would say, as if the timing of their dream was something they could control. Daniel wanted to shout, to tell them that they were wrong, that it wasn't about fate or destiny. It was about the deep, unspoken yearning they had in their hearts. It was about the dreams they had planned for so long, dreams that felt so far from their reach. He didn't need a platitude. He needed a solution. And with every word of false comfort, he felt the weight of his own helplessness grow heavier. Then there were the comments that cut deeper, words that felt almost like judgment, as if they were being blamed for their inability to conceive. "Maybe you're not meant to be parents," one friend had said, offering the phrase with a smile that only made the sting worse. Daniel had tried to brush it off, but it haunted him, gnawing at him late at night when he was alone with his thoughts. Was that really what the world thought of them? That they weren't good enough to be parents? That they weren't worthy of the family they dreamed of? The thought of it made his chest tighten. His heart broke a little more every time someone spoke those words, even if they meant no harm. Because in the silence between the lines, he could hear the implication. They were broken in some way. And what if they were? Leah, ever the optimist, would reassure him, even when he knew her words were a fragile veil over the pain she carried. "We will get through this, Daniel. We have each other, and that's enough for now," she would say, trying to give him hope. But even as she spoke, Daniel could see the toll it had taken on her. Her smile was always a little too forced, her laughter a little too hollow. He could feel her spirit shrinking under the weight of the endless disappointment. It was as if each failed attempt to conceive chipped away at the light that had once been so radiant in her eyes. And then, after years of struggling, the cruel blow came. Leah found out she was pregnant. For a moment, Daniel felt the rush of hope flood his heart, but that hope was fleeting. Soon came the bleeding, and with it, the devastating confirmation. Their baby was gone. The miscarriage tore through them like a storm, uprooting everything in its path. Leah's grief was so deep, Daniel could feel it in his bones. His strong, steady wife, the woman he loved with every fiber of his being, crumbled in his arms, her sobs breaking the silence of their home. It was the worst moment of their lives. Leah's heart, already fragile from years of trying and failing, shattered further. And Daniel could do nothing to stop it. He could do nothing to ease her pain. He could only hold her as she wept, feeling her anguish seep into his own soul. He had never felt so helpless, so utterly powerless. His dream of becoming a father seemed so far out of reach now, farther than it had ever felt before. The pain of loss, compounded by years of hope and heartache, left them both numb. Leah had always been the stronger one, but in this moment, Daniel couldn't help but feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looked at the woman he loved and wondered how much more she could take. She was so broken, so devastated, and he didn't know how to heal her. It felt like they were trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. With each loss, the dream of becoming parents seemed to slip further and further away. Daniel wanted to believe they could still have the family they dreamed of, but in the quiet of that moment, he could feel that hope flickering. It was slipping through his fingers, like sand in the wind. And so they cried together, holding on to each other as though they were the only two people in the world. In their grief, they found solace in each other's presence. But even as they held each other tight, Daniel knew that this was the moment where their journey had changed. This was the moment where their dream of becoming parents seemed less like a promise and more like a distant fading star. They had reached their lowest point. Yet somehow Daniel knew that this pain, this loss, wasn't the end. It couldn't be. But he also knew that the road ahead would be long, filled with more heartache and uncertainty. The only thing he was sure of in that moment was this: he would never stop fighting for Leah. No matter how impossible it seemed. After the miscarriage, Leah sat in their living room, her face pale, her eyes tired from the grief that seemed endless. It was as though the light had dimmed inside her, the vibrant energy she once had now replaced by a quiet sorrow. Daniel could feel the weight of it. He had known this day would come, the day when Leah would wonder if she could keep going. They had been through so much, and the pain of losing their baby was too much for her to bear. She was strong, but in that moment, Daniel saw her fragility in a way he never had before. "I'm not sure I can do this again, Daniel," Leah whispered, her voice breaking. The treatments, the heartache, it's too much. I don't know how much more I can take." Her words were a punch to the gut. Daniel's heart ached for her, for the woman he loved, the woman who had given so much of herself, only to be met with more pain than anyone should ever have to endure. He didn't know how to fix this for her. He had failed, in a sense, because he couldn't give her the one thing she longed for: motherhood. But Daniel knew one thing. He couldn't and wouldn't let Leah give up. Not now, not after everything they had been through. He reached for her hand, his voice steady, yet filled with the rawness of his emotion. "Leah," he said softly, looking into her eyes with sincerity that came from the depths of his soul, "we've come this far and we can't stop now. We've fought for this dream together, and I'm not going to let you fight alone. We're not giving up. We will do whatever it takes, no matter how hard, no matter how long. I will be here with you every step of the way. We are going to keep fighting because our dream is worth fighting for." Leah looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. But there was something else there, too, something faint but undeniable, a spark of hope. She squeezed his hand, a small, almost imperceptible nod. Daniel could see it in her eyes. She wasn't ready to give up either. She had the strength to keep going, even if the road was uncertain, even if it hurt more than she could put into words. And so, despite their fear, despite the overwhelming sense of vulnerability that haunted them both, they made the decision to try one more round of IVF. It was not an easy decision. The emotional toll of the previous treatments had drained them both. Leah had given so much of herself already, and Daniel knew the weight of the decision. But they couldn't bear the thought of walking away from the possibility of becoming parents, of having a family. Leah was scared. How could she not be? But her love for Daniel and her unwavering belief in their dream gave her the courage to try again. With Daniel by her side, offering constant reassurance, she felt a sense of peace amid the storm. His belief in her was enough to push her forward. Every day he reminded her that they were in this together, that they would face whatever came their way. The days that followed were filled with tension, but also with quiet moments of tenderness. There was a peace between them, a bond that had grown stronger through their shared pain. Daniel stood by Leah, supporting her as they moved through each phase of the treatment, comforting her when doubt crept in. It felt like the longest wait of their lives. Each day they found themselves wondering if this time would be different. Would the IVF work? Would they finally have the family they had so desperately wanted? Or would they be faced with yet another heartbreaking failure? Daniel tried not to think about the uncertainty, but every night, as he lay awake beside Leah, his mind raced with the possibilities. What would happen if it didn't work? How could he possibly watch Leah go through another round of grief, another round of trying and failing? His love for her was so deep that it consumed him. He wanted to protect her from this pain, but he also knew that the only way through it was together. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the phone call came. Daniel's heart raced as he picked up the phone, his hand trembling slightly. The voice on the other end was calm, reassuring. The IVF had worked. The news was everything they had hoped for, everything they had prayed for. But then came the words, that would change their lives forever. "You're expecting triplets," the doctor said, his voice filled with disbelief. Daniel's world seemed to stop in that moment. His hands shook as he stared at the phone, the words barely registering at first. Triplets. 3 babies. It was too much to process, too much joy to contain. He looked at Leah, her eyes wide with surprise. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. For a few seconds, they didn't speak. They just stared at each other, unsure if this was real. Then, without warning, Daniel began to laugh, loudly, uncontrollably, the sheer joy of the moment spilling out of him. Leah joined in, her laughter bubbling up from deep inside. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of joy, tears of pure, unbridled happiness. It was a miracle. It wasn't just the child they had longed for, but 3. 3 little lives growing inside Leah, 3 tiny hearts beating in sync with their own. The years of heartache, the sleepless nights, the pain, and the doubt, all of it seemed worth it in that moment. Every challenge, every setback had led them to this beautiful, unexpected blessing. As Daniel held Leah close, their laughter echoing in the room, he realized something profound. The pain they had endured had made them stronger, but it had also shown them the true depth of their love. The dream they had fought for so long was finally coming true, not in the way they had imagined, but in a way that was even more miraculous than they could have ever hoped for. They were going to be parents, 3 times over. And in that moment, Daniel knew that the journey had been worth every tear, every moment of doubt. They had fought for their dream together, and now they were finally going to see it come true. The pregnancy was not without its challenges. The joy of expecting triplets was always tinged with anxiety. Leah's body, already delicate from years of infertility treatments, struggled to carry 3 little lives. The weight of it was harder than she had imagined, and she found herself exhausted in ways she never thought possible. But despite the discomfort, despite the worries, there was an undeniable joy that came with each passing day. The moment she felt the first flutter of movement inside her, it was as if her entire being was filled with a sense of awe and gratitude. There were 3 little lives growing inside her, 3 tiny hearts beating, 3 souls that were meant to be part of their family. Leah, though weary, was determined to embrace this miracle. Every ultrasound, every tiny heartbeat they heard, was a reminder of the incredible journey they had been on and the joy that was finally within their reach. Yet there were moments when fear crept in. The doctors warned them of the potential complications that came with carrying triplets. Leah spent long hours in bed rest, sometimes wondering if everything would go according to plan. She couldn't help but worry for their health, for their safety. But with each appointment, with each reassuring smile from the doctors, her fear slowly began to dissipate. Daniel was there through it all, never once leaving her side. He could see the toll the pregnancy was taking on Leah, but his love for her only deepened with every step of the journey. He had learned so much from her strength and grace. As the CEO of a successful company, Daniel was used to making decisions, solving problems, and leading others. But parenthood was different. It wasn't about solving problems or conquering challenges in the boardroom. It was about being present, being patient, being gentle with the woman he loved, and supporting her in every way he could. There were days when Leah struggled to get out of bed, when the weight of the triplets made everything seem like too much. On those days, Daniel would gently help her up, take her hand, and walk with her through the day, never leaving her side. He took on more of the household responsibilities, making sure she didn't have to worry about anything but her health and the babies. He was learning that fatherhood didn't come with a set of instructions. It was about being there, being attentive, and understanding when words weren't enough. It was about offering a steady hand and a loving heart in the face of uncertainty. Daniel's admiration for Leah grew every day. He saw the sacrifices she made, the resilience she embodied. She was carrying their dreams, their future, and the weight of that responsibility was not lost on him. The love he had for her, for the woman who had stood by him through their darkest moments, deepened in a way he had never experienced. Each day, he watched in awe as she embraced the difficult but beautiful journey of pregnancy. Her beauty shone in every moment, her strength radiating even in the most trying times. As the weeks went on, the excitement of their journey began to feel real, tangible. They could no longer deny the reality that they were going to be parents, and not just parents to one child, but to three. It was overwhelming, but it was also everything they had dreamed of. The triplets, though still tiny, had already begun to feel like a part of their world. Their names were chosen with love and care. Daniel and Leah spent hours talking about what their lives would be like once the babies arrived. They imagined the laughter, the chaos, the sleepless nights, and the immeasurable joy that would come with raising three children. And then the day arrived, the day they had been waiting for with hearts full of hope, anxiety, and excitement. Leah's labor began early in the morning, and the anticipation was unbearable. Daniel stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement as they prepared for the biggest moment of their lives. The hospital room was filled with the soft sounds of their voices, the beeping of the monitors, and the hurried footsteps of the nurses. But amidst the controlled chaos, there was an undeniable sense of peace. They were ready for this. Leah, exhausted but determined, pushed with all her might. The pain was overwhelming, but she didn't care. She knew that the moment she had dreamed of, prayed for, and fought for was finally here. Daniel was in awe of her strength, and he could feel his heart swell with pride as he saw her take on this final challenge with the same grace and resilience that had defined her through every obstacle they had faced together. And then, after what felt like a lifetime of waiting, the first baby was born. A beautiful, healthy boy with a strong cry that echoed through the room. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he held his son for the first time, his heart swelling with a love so deep it was hard to put into words. The boy's tiny fingers wrapped around his own, and Daniel's world shifted in that instant. And then, moments later, the twin girls arrived. The room was filled with the sound of their cries, and Daniel couldn't help but laugh through his tears. His heart was full, overwhelmed by the love he felt for these three tiny beings who had changed everything for him and Leah. It was more than they had ever imagined, more than they had ever dared to dream. Leah, though exhausted, smiled through her tears as she held her babies close, their warmth bringing a sense of completeness that she had longed for. The pain, the heartbreak, the years of waiting, all of it faded into the background as she looked at the three miracles in her arms. Daniel kissed her forehead, whispering how much he loved her, how proud he was of her. They were finally parents. Their family, once a distant dream, was now a reality. They had overcome every obstacle, every tear, every setback, and in the end, their perseverance had been rewarded with a gift more precious than anything they could have ever hoped for. As Daniel looked down at his three children, he realized that nothing in his corporate career had ever felt as meaningful, as fulfilling as this moment. The world of business, of meetings and profits, no longer seemed as important. This was what mattered. This was the legacy he would leave behind. A family built on love, resilience, and the kind of strength that only comes from facing adversity and never giving up. In the end, the pain they had endured had led them here, to this moment of joy, to this gift of parenthood. And Daniel knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. They had been given the gift of family, and now it was time to embrace it with open hearts. The journey to parenthood had not been easy, but it had been worth every step. The gift of parenthood was one they would treasure for the rest of their lives. As Daniel and Leah sat together, their triplets nestled in their arms, they saw in their children a reflection of everything they had fought for, a future of hope, strength, and the purity of love. The babies, wrapped in soft blankets, each a tiny miracle, were more than just the culmination of their dreams. They were a symbol of resilience, persistence, and the beauty that can emerge from the most difficult of struggles. They had overcome so much to get here, and now, in this moment, they realized how far they had come, not just in their journey to parenthood, but in defying the barriers of a world that often judged people by the color of their skin or their backgrounds. Daniel, as a white man, had experienced the world from a certain perspective, one that had never required him to confront the biases and prejudices that Leah, a beautiful black woman, had faced throughout her life. As their journey unfolded, Daniel began to understand, with more clarity than ever before, the weight of societal expectations and the judgment that Leah had been subjected to, simply because of the color of her skin. But Leah, with her unshakable strength, never let those judgments define her. She had always held her head high, never allowing the world's narrow-mindedness to dim her light. Leah had shown Daniel the true meaning of perseverance. She taught him that love is stronger than prejudice and that resilience does not have a color. Through her example, Daniel learned that it was not enough to just be kind or non-racist. True change, he realized, came from confronting the injustices of the world, from not staying silent in the face of hate, and from ensuring that love was always louder than fear. Their children, 3 beautiful, innocent babies, had no concept of the world they were about to enter. But Daniel and Leah knew all too well the challenges their children might face. They could not shield them from every harsh reality, but they could promise to raise them in a home full of unconditional love, where their worth would never be measured by the color of their skin or the expectations others had of them. They would never be told that they were less than, and they would always know their value in the eyes of their parents. Leah and Daniel held their babies close, feeling the weight of the world's struggles, but also the overwhelming hope that this family, this new chapter of their lives, could be the change they longed to see. Daniel's mind drifted back to all the painful moments, the time when well-meaning friends and family made uncomfortable remarks about their interracial marriage, the subtle but cruel ways the world sometimes tried to make them feel like they didn't belong. He had witnessed firsthand the painful effects of racial prejudice, and yet Leah had continued to rise above it all, with dignity and grace. She had been the one who taught him to never accept the limitations society tried to place on them, to never let hatred seep into their hearts. It was Leah's love that had given him the courage to stand up against the injustices they faced together, to challenge the small-mindedness that tried to hold them back. She had shown him that real strength isn't measured by the ability to fight back, but by the ability to love and persevere in the face of adversity. As Daniel held his children, he made a silent promise to them, promises he had made to Leah countless times before. He promised to create a world for them where their identity would be embraced, celebrated, and never diminished. He promised that they would grow up knowing they were loved for exactly who they were, with all the beauty of their backgrounds, their heritage, and their unique stories. They would never feel that they were less than anyone else. They would grow up knowing the importance of kindness, compassion, and standing up for what was right. But Daniel also realized that this promise went beyond his own family. He knew that in a world still plagued by racism, his children, like so many others, would face challenges that seemed insurmountable at times. But he also understood now that the most powerful weapon they could wield in this world would be love. Love for each other, love for the world around them, and a love so strong that it could overcome even the darkest of prejudices. It would be their love that would make them resilient, their love that would lift them higher than any obstacle society might try to place in their path. Daniel's journey had taught him a powerful lesson, one that he would carry with him every day of his life. Love is not bound by the color of someone's skin or the background they come from. True strength comes not from being invincible, but from the willingness to keep going, to keep loving, and to keep fighting for a better world. As the family sat together, the soft sounds of the baby's breathing filling the room, Daniel realized that their story was not just about their personal struggle with infertility or their triumph in becoming parents. It was a reminder that love resilience, and hope should never be confined by the narrow views of a racist society. Their love had carried them through the darkest moments, and now it was shining brighter than ever. And with that realization came a promise, one that Daniel would pass down to his children, that no matter where they came from, no matter the color of their skin, they were worthy of the same love, respect, and opportunity as anyone else. The world would try to tell them otherwise, but Daniel knew that the power of love would always speak louder than hate. In a world that still carried the weight of racism, their family stood as a beacon of hope, a shining example of what could be achieved when love transcended everything else. Their family, built on the foundations of persistence, hope, and unshakable love, was the embodiment of the lesson that would shape their future and, hopefully, the world's. True strength, resilience, and love know no color.